In the Pachensky district of the Murmansk Oblast, there is an ice-bound desert. Here, the wind, meeting no barrier, accelerates to the speed of a hurricane. Here, the polar night endures for months, blurring the very distinction between one day and the next. Amid stand the ruins of a cyclopean structure. Rusted metal groans, collapsed concrete floors sag. The wind howls through the empty, black eye sockets of its window frames. The site appears as a set piece for a film about a nuclear apocalypse or an exclusion zone sealed after a biological catastrophe. But if one were to risk the journey, clambering through the wreckage of construction debris and snow into the heart of the main machine hall, one would find something strange. Something that seems impossibly small, utterly insignificant for a legend of such planetary scale. A small, inconspicuous metal cap coated in a thick crust of rust. It is welded fast to a thick-walled steel pipe, a mere 23 centimeters in diameter. 12 massive bolts seized by time and abyss. On its lid, an inscription is barely legible. 12,262. These are not just numbers, and this is not a manhole cover. This is the plug, the cork holding back a secret 12 kilometers, 262 meters deep. This is the Kola Superdeep Borehole, object SG3, the deepest point humanity has ever reached. A depth that surpasses the crushing darkness of the Mariana Trench. If one could invert Mount Everest and plunge it into this chasm, its summit would vanish more than 3 kilometers beneath the surface. We are accustomed to looking to the cosmos, dreaming of distant galaxies, building telescopes to witness the dawn of time. But the true, frightening, physically tangible unknown is not above our heads. It is directly beneath our feet. We live on a thin, cooled crust, and below it rages an ocean of fire, pressure, and radiation, about which we know almost nothing. For decades, the world was fed tabloid fictions to explain why the mighty Soviet Union, with its limitless scientific resources, would suddenly, almost in a panic, abandon this project of the century. They wrote of demons clawing their way to the surface, of a physical gateway to hell, of the recorded cries of the damned captured by heat-proof microphones at the bottom of the world. But the reality was infinitely more complex, more astonishing, and ultimately more terrifying than any mysticism. The truth was not found in theology, but in physics. It was the discovery that at a depth of 12 kilometers, the planet Earth ceases to be solid. The revelation that the laws of geology we learned in school simply do not apply down there. It was the understanding that in that crushing abyss, time itself flows differently, and matter warps its fundamental properties, becoming a substance caught somewhere between solid stone and yielding plastic. Buried within the declassified archives of the Soviet Ministry of Geology, reports lie dormant, their pages holding a faint radioactive dust. They tell the story of a unique drilling rig, a machine engineered to conquer any rock, that one day inexplicably stopped dead, as if it had struck an unseen, impenetrable barrier. This is an account of a moment when humanity knocked on a door deep within the earth, and something answered. To understand what transpired on the desolate Kola Peninsula, we must return to a different era, the 1960s. The Cold War is at its zenith. The world holds its breath, balanced on a razor's edge, living under the constant shadow of nuclear annihilation. Two superpowers, the Soviet Union and the United States, are locked in a rivalry that consumes every facet of existence. A contest for the most powerful thermonuclear bomb, for the first human in orbit, for the fastest submarine, the most precise missile. The space race played out in the full glare of the global spotlight. Gagarin, Armstrong, Sputnik, Apollo, their names were etched onto the front pages of history. But far from the headlines, another race was underway. A silent, subterranean contest, known only to a select few with the highest security clearance. It was a race not to the stars, but to the very heart of our own planet. A race to the Earth's mantle, to the Mohorovičić discontinuity. The Americans made the first move. Theirs was an audacious endeavor, Project Mohole. Their logic was pragmatic, straightforward. The Earth's oceanic crust is a fraction of the thickness of its continental counterpart. By drilling from the ocean floor, they would only need to penetrate 6 kilometers of rock to touch the mantle. Off the coast of Guadalupe Island in the Pacific, their drill began to turn. But the ocean is a merciless adversary. The primitive dynamic positioning technology of the era could not hold the platform steady against the relentless storms. After consuming millions of dollars, the project was unceremoniously terminated by the United States Congress. The Soviet Union accepted the challenge, doxical one. They would not seek the path of least resistance through the thin, unstable oceanic crust. Instead, they aimed their drill at the very heart of a continent. Through the Baltic Shield, the most ancient, formidable rock on the planet, a mass of granite 3 billion years old, long considered utterly impenetrable. It was a decision that bordered on engineering madness. To drill at the one point where the crust was at its absolute thickest. The question was, why? Because for the Soviet scientists, this was never merely about setting a record. It was about fundamental knowledge. It was about discovering the true composition of the very ground beneath their feet. The geophysics of the era was a science of shadows and inference. Scientists could read the echoes of seismic waves passing through there formed a direct biopsy. No one had ever held in their hands a physical sample of rock from 10 kilodamen, dying only its shadow. They needed a core sample. They needed to take a bite. And so, in 1970, to mark the 100th anniversary of Vladimir Lenin's birth, the great machine roared to life. The engineers at the controls, clad in thick wool sweaters against the Arctic chill, had no inkling of the true nature of their mission. They believed they were drilling into the Earth's crust. They could not have known they were beginning a journey into the deepest strata of the unknown itself. It was a journey that would last 20 years, destined to end with a discovery that would shatter our very understanding of the planet. They thought they knew what lay in wait. A predictable sequence of layers, sedimentary rock, then granite, then basalt, and finally the mantle. They were wrong on every single point. The world beneath their feet was structured in a way no one had ever imagined. To assault the deep earth, a unique machine was forged, with no equal anywhere in the world. This was not the familiar oil derrick of Texas millionaires. This was a vertical factory, a skyscraper sheathed in panels to shield it from the relentless polar winds. Its name? The Uralmash 15,000. The number was a declaration of its audacious goal, 15,000 meters, 15 kilometers straight down. The rig's design resembled a space rocket, poised for launch. Only its great nozzle was aimed not toward the heavens, but downward, into the heart of the planet. Inside this titan, a sterile cleanliness reigned, alien to the grime of typical drilling operations. Pipes were fed automatically. Control systems were managed by the first generation of Soviet mainframe computers. The personnel walked the halls in white lab coats. Conventional rotary drilling, where an engine at the surface spins the entire pipe, was impossible at such depths. A steel pipe 10 kilometers long weighs hundreds of tons. To attempt to rotate it would be to watch it twist from inertia and rupture under its own coloss. And so Soviet engineers deployed a technology that was decades ahead of its time, the turbo drill. The entire multi-kilometer column of pipes does not rotate. It stands motionless, a giant stationary needle plunged into the earth. Only the small drill head at the very bottom spins. It is brought to life by the pressure of drilling fluid, pumped from above by powerful engines at a monstrous pressure of hundreds of atmospheres. The fluid rushes down, spins the blades of a miniature turbine, and that turbine grinds the stone with diamond teeth. The exhausted fluid then catches the rock fragments and carries them to the surface, cooling the instrument as it ascends. The pipes themselves were not steel, but special lightweight aluminium alloys, engineered to reduce the column's immense weight. Without them, the derrick simply could not have lifted the load. The aluminium was stronger than steel in tension, but far more sensitive to temperature. It was jeweler's work, performed with titanic instruments. The drill, studded with industrial diamonds and super-hard alloys, bit into the ancient Archean granites, inch by inch, meter by meter. The first 7 kilometers passed with deceptive ease. This was familiar territory, charted by oil prospectors. But then, at a depth of 7,000 meters, the anomalies began. Oddities that forced geologists to clutch their heads and rewrite their dissertations. Seismologists the world over had predicted that at 7 kilometers, the velocity of sound waves passing through the rock would change dramatically, a phenomenon they called the Conrad discontinuity. It was the accepted boundary between the granite and basalt layers of the Earth's crust. But the boundary wasn't there. The Earth refused to conform to the textbooks. With every meter they descended, the planet did not become more familiar, but more alien. They had set out to conquer the underworld, only to discover that the maps they held were fictions, and the true nature of the world beneath their feet remained an enigma, as profound and silent as the cosmos above. It was an axiom, a foundational truth of geology. The Earth's crust was a layered cake. On top, sedimentary rock, sand and clay. Below that, a solid granite foundation. And deeper still, past a boundary known as the Conrad discontinuity, there should have been a dense, heavy layer of black basalt resting upon the mantle. The drill bit chewed past the 7,000 meter mark. A core sample, a perfect cylinder of the deep earth, was brought to the surface. Geologists huddled over their instruments, anticipating the dark, heavy basalt they knew must be there. What they found was granite, and below that, gneiss, a stone born from granite. The basalt was missing. It simply did not exist. The Conrad discontinuity, that fundamental line on every geological map, was a phantom, a grand scientific fiction, an illusion conjured by seismic waves. This was the first shock. The Earth's interior was not what we believed it to be. The change our instruments had detected, the boundary they had dutifully recorded, was not a transition from granite to basalt. It was the result of colossal pressure, squeezing the granite into an entirely new state of matter. The chemical composition was unchanged, but its physical density had been warped. The rock was compressed so intensely that sound waves traveled faster through it, deceiving our sensors miles above. We realized our maps of the world beneath our feet were wrong. We were drilling blind. And the deeper the drill descended, the more the planet defied expectation. At depths where pressure reaches thousands of atmospheres, where the rock is crushed so completely there should be no pore, no fissure, no void, they discovered water. By the laws of surface physics, this was impossible. It could not have seeped from above through 10 kilometers of solid rock. Isotopic analysis revealed the truth. This water had never seen the sun. It had not fallen as rain, nor flowed in rivers. It was born in the deep. This was metamorphic water. Under monstrous pressure, gen and hydrogen were literally squeezed from the crystal lattice of the stone itself, combining to form superheated steam. But this steam had nowhere to escape. Trapped by miles of granite above, the Earth's crust broth. And this broth was aggressive. It was not merely water, but a superheated mineral so actures in the metal, causing catastrophic embrittlement. Drill bits designed to last for weeks were consumed in mere hours. It was as if the planet itself was fighting back, defending its secrets. But the most incredible discovery was still to come. At a depth where only dead, sterile matter should exist, they found signs of life, and with it, a strange and inexplicable connection to the cosmos. The search for the bottom of the world had revealed that the deepest, darkest corners of our own planet are as alien and unknown as the farthest reaches of space, challenging our very definition of where Earth ends and the universe begins. In core samples, pulled from an abyss more than 2 billion years old, lie microscopic fossils. Plankton, single-celled algae, 14 distinct species of petrified microorganisms. Here, where unimaginable pressure and heat should have pulverized any trace of organic matter, life endured. The discovery was a revelation. Life on Earth was far older, far more resilient to extreme conditions than science had ever dared to presume. Bacteria had lived and died, entombed alive within the stone. Then came a fact that defied all expectation. In the 1970s, Soviet automated landers returned with soil from the lunar surface. When scientists compared its composition to the rock drilled from the Kola borehole, the results were staggering. They were identical, a perfect match. It was powerful evidence for the theory that our moon is no cosmic stranger, but a fragment of Earth itself, torn away billions of years ago in the fury of a colossal asteroid impact. The Kola borehole had become an impossible bridge, connecting the center of the Earth to the cosmos. Humanity had drilled down, and in doing so, had found the moon. But in 1989, as the drill bit reached its record-breaking depths, a different story began to circulate. First in a Finnish newspaper, then broadcast to the world by an American religious network, a sensational dispatch emerged from the Iron Curtain. Soviet scientists, the story claimed, had lowered a heat-proof microphone into the shaft and recorded the sounds of hell itself, the screams, groans and wails of millions of tormented souls. The project's director, a certain Dr. Dmitry Azarkov, was quoted as saying, "We have drilled through the roof of hell." The tale became an instant global phenomenon. The audio recording, a chilling symphony of shrieks, still haunts the internet, terrifying listeners and collecting millions of views. Yet the myth crumbles under the weight of science and engineering. First, no acoustic microphone capable of functioning at 200 degrees Celsius and 1,000 atmospheres of pressure existed at the time. Its diaphragm would have instantly melted into its housing or been crushed into oblivion. Second, Dr. Dmitry Azarkov was a complete fabrication. The real director was the legendary Soviet geologist David Guberman, a serious scientist who for the rest of his life would laugh at the story, calling it dog nonsense. The recording itself was a crude fabrication, A mix of sound effects from a 1972 horror film titled Barren Blood looped and layered over the noise of a crowd. But this does not mean the borehole was silent. It was not. It had a voice, and that voice was recorded. For seismic monitoring, special geophones were used, sensitive receivers that captured the vibrations of the rock itself. When these seismic recordings were transposed into a range audible to the human ear, scientists heard something truly terrifying and truly majestic. It was not a scream. It was a low, guttural hum. A grinding, a cracking, a deep, vibrating howl. It was the sound of a planet that is alive. The sound of lithospheric plates grinding against one another in a slow, inexorable dance. The truth was never about damnation. It was about creation. At a depth of 12 kilometers, the Earth is not dead, nor is it static. It is a living, breathing world. Its voice, a constant, powerful reminder of the immense and ancient forces that churn, unseen, just beneath our feet. It is in constant motion. Down in the deep dark, a world of unseen forces is alive with micro-earthquakes, with faults grinding against one another, with strata shifting under unimaginable strain. The rock itself groans, cracking under the pressure of a planet's weight. The sound, when sensors finally captured it, was not of this world. It was the sound of a colossal, unlubricated and overloaded machine. A hollow, low-frequency moan that gave way to rhythmic, hammering blows. To the professional geologist, this sound was more terrifying than any myth of hell, for it meant only one thing: the rock was unstable. The stress in the Earth's depths had reached a critical point. At any moment, the borehole could collapse, imploding upon itself, burying decades of work in an instant. The horror was not mystical, it was tectonic. But the driller's greatest enemy on the Kola Peninsula would not be the hardness of the rock. It was the heat. It was entropy. The initial calculations by geophysicists had been optimistic. They predicted a gentle, linear rise in temperature, what is known as the geothermal gradient, of roughly 10 degrees Celsius for every kilometer of depth. According to their models, at 15 kilometers down, the temperature should have been around 120 degrees. Hot, but manageable for the technology of the day. But when the drill bit passed the 7-kilometer mark, the temperature graph shot upwards, catastrophically. It was as if one were descending into a cool wine cellar, only to open a door straight into the firebox of a steam locomotive. The gradient had changed in a single, violent leap. At a depth of 7 kilometers, the temperature was already 120 degrees. By 12 kilometers, the sensors registered 212 degrees Celsius, twice the highest scientific predictions. The water trapped in the rock was not merely boiling. It was a superheated vapor, contained only by the crushing pressure of the abyss. For the equipment, it was a death sentence. The electronics that guided the drill began to fail, their semiconductors overwhelmed by the heat. Cable insulation coated from the diamond-tipped drill bits, the hardest material known to science, began to degrade, the immense temperatures threatening to transform the diamond back into simple graphite. But the most terrifying discovery was not what was happening to the machines, it was what was happening to the rock itself. We think of granite and gneiss as the very definition of permanence. Monuments carved from it stand for millennia. But the physics of extreme pressure and temperature transforms the nature of matter beyond all recognition. 12 kilometers down, under the pressure of 1,000 atmospheres and at a temperature of 212 degrees, the ancient Archean rock, stone that was 3 billion years old, lost its crystalline rigidity. Imagine trying to drill a clean hole through a tube of toothpaste. The moment the drill is withdrawn, the hole begins to squeeze shut, to deform, to disappear. The walls of the borehole began to flow. The shaft itself began to heal. The earth was closing the wound, and in doing so, it revealed a profound truth, that the solid ground we build our lives upon is an illusion, a thin, cool crust floating on a deep, slow, and eternal fire. What was meant to be a perfectly vertical arrow into the unknown had begun to curve. As the drill bit descended through zones of varying density and viscosity, D record. The borehole was no longer a straight line. It had twisted into a complex three-dimensional spiral, a corkscrew boring into the crust. Maintaining a true vertical descent became technically impossible. But this was not the worst of it. The very nature of the rock revealed a terrifying plasticity. To replace the drill bit, a task required every 4 hours as the granite relentlessly wore them down, the entire drill column had to be raised. And as it ascended, the borehole would attempt to seal itself shut. The rock would clench, gripping the tool in a geologic vice. Imagine it. 5, 6, then 10 kilometers of steel and aluminum pipe, a column weighing 200 tons, suspended from a hook, and deep below it is held fast by the earth. Accidents followed, one after another. The most dramatic, the most devastating, occurred in the year 1984. The depth was 12,066 meters. The project was on the verge of triumph. Moscow awaited reports for the upcoming Party Congress. But during a routine ascent of the pipe column, it became hopelessly stuck. The attempt to wrench it free with brute force resulted in catastrophe. A snap. 5 kilometers of pipe and the unique custom-built turbo drill were lost, swallowed by the earth forever. They could never be recovered. The main borehole was lost. 5 years of labor annihilated in a single second. They were forced to begin anew, branching off from a depth of 7,000 meters. Then came another accident, and another. In cross-section, the borehole began to resemble the root system of a great tree, a multitude of trunks descending, only to be broken off. Geologists spoke of the winds of the underworld. But this was the physics of extreme states. At such depths, the rock exists under colossal stress, a force known as lithostatic pressure. When the drill invades this fragile equilibrium, the rock bursts inward. The walls of the borehole do not crumble, they explode. It was this property, the incredible, unpredictable plasticity of stone, combined with a hellish metal melting heat, that became the wall against which Soviet science shattered. There were no demons, no ghosts. There was only superheated, flowing granite that refused to remain solid. And yet, in the heart of this technological nightmare, a ray of impossible hope appeared. In a twist of profound irony, it was there, where drilling had become nearly impossible, that scientists found the very thing for which humanity has slaughtered and excavated for millennia: gold. At a depth of 9,500 meters, the drill entered a formation geologists named the Olivine Belt. Analysis of the core samples revealed a concentration of gold that would have driven any Klondike prospector to madness: 78 grams per ton. Consider this. On the surface, industrial gold mining is considered exceptionally profitable at just 5 grams per ton. Here, the concentration was nearly 20 times greater. This was a true lair of gold, with nuggets embedded in the rock, visible to the naked eye. The ultimate prize, discovered at the absolute limit of human endeavor. A treasure revealed only at the precise moment it became clear it could never be reached. The Earth had shared a secret, but not its riches, leaving humanity to gaze into the abyss at a fortune it could see, but never touch. Beneath the Kola Peninsula, trillions of dollars in gold reserves lie entombed, a fortune vast enough to collapse the global economy. But it rests in a realm where humanity is powerless. To extract this treasure from a depth of 10 kilometers would cost 1,000 times more than the value of the gold itself. The discovery became nature's cruelest joke. The planet itself seemed to taunt us, whispering, "Behold your riches. They are right here. But your arms are too short, your grasp too weak to ever claim them." This revelation confirmed a radical theory. Gold and other heavy metals do not simply settle in the crust from ancient rivers. They ascend from the liquid mantle, seeping through micro-fissures in the rock, carried upward by metamorphic water. The Kola borehole had, in effect, struck a deep artery of the Earth, a vein through which the planet's own lifeblood delivered precious metals toward the surface. By the early 1990s, the drill had reached 12,262 meters, an absolute world record that remains unbroken. But every new meter was purchased with heroic effort, paid for with constant equipment failures and colossal expense. Above, an empire was collapsing. The Soviet economy was unraveling at the seams, and deep below, an anomalous heat continued to build. Projections show that at the target depth of 15 kilometers, the temperature would soar to 300 degrees Celsius. No modern equipment, no advanced alloy, no form of electronics could survive in such an environment for more than a few minutes. Metal turned as soft as wax. Circuits failed instantly. The quest to go deeper became a futile struggle against the very physics of our world. The project was officially halted in 1994, not because of mythical monsters clawing their way from the abyss, nor out of a primal fear of hell itself. The reason was far more prosaic and far more telling. The money was gone, and the technology had reached its absolute limit. Mankind had reached a fundamental barrier. We could build a rocket to Mars, but we could not forge a drill bit that could withstand the infernal heat of our own planet. The gateway to the deep was sealed. A massive steel cap, welded shut, secured by 12 bolts the size of a grown man's arm. The vast complex, once a temple to Soviet science, was abandoned to the elements. Its roof collapsed under the weight of winter snow. Its equipment was stripped for scrap. The archives, containing a generation of priceless data, were hauled away in a rush. Today, the site of the Kola Superdeep is a post-apocalyptic ruin, a monument to where the ambitions of a civilization shattered against the unyielding laws of nature. But was it a failure? No, it was one of the greatest scientific triumphs of the 20th century. They did not reach the mantle. They did not reach 15 kilometers. But the 12 kilometers they did conquer gave science more than all the preceding centuries of theoretical guesswork combined. We learned our models of the Earth's internal temperature were wrong. We learned that the granite layer of the crust does not give way to basalt as long believed. And most profoundly, we discovered that life could exist in solid rock at unimaginable depths, in the form of fossilized microorganisms 2 billion years old. The journey inward had failed to reach its destination, yet it succeeded in fundamentally changing our view of the world beneath our feet. We set out in search of the planet's heart, and in the crushing depths, we found a mirror to our own limitations and a testament to the enduring, unexpected persistence of life itself. We learned of water born not from the sky, but from the deep rock of the planet itself. We found evidence that confirmed the violent, shared ancestry of the Earth and its moon. But most profoundly, the Kola Superdeep Borehole revealed our true place. We are but a thin, vulnerable film of life, a delicate mold clinging to the surface of a giant, incandescent, living sphere. We scratch at its skin, erecting our cities, laboring under the delusion that we are its masters. Yet one need only descend a fraction of the way, a mere 0.2% of the planet's radius, for the Earth to reveal its true and savage nature. A realm where ills in the crushing dark, a place of staggering radiation and incomprehensible temperatures. This is the reality that churns just beneath the world we know. Today, a heavy metal cap, welded shut and surrendering to rust, marks the entrance to that other world. The most intrepid travelers rarely find this desolate place, but if you were to press your ear to the cold, corroded steel amidst the Arctic wasteland, you would not hear the fabled screams of sinners or the groans of demons. You would hear only the whistle of the indifferent wind through the ruins. The true secret is locked away beneath 12 kilometers of stone, and perhaps it is for the best. Because what the Soviet drillers encountered was a fundamental challenge to our understanding of matter itself, the unpredictable plasticity of the solid world. It tells us that the heart of our planet guards its mysteries more fiercely than any vault. We knocked on a door deep within the earth. There was no answer, and for this we should perhaps be grateful. For if they had managed to pierce that final ductile layer, if they had unleashed the colossal pressures, the primordial gases, and the raw energy contained by the crust, the consequences would have dwarfed the most terrifying of prophecies. The borehole is sealed, but the data it yielded continues to be deciphered, a complex transmission from an alien world. It serves as a constant, humbling reminder that the most unexplored, the most hostile, and ultimately the most magnificent cosmos of all does not lie in the distant stars above, but in the silent, fathomless darkness directly beneath our feet.